All right, everybody. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you please rise for the pledge. All right, welcome to our April Committee of the Whole and Special Action Meeting. Mrs. Sugars, would you take roll, please?
Mr. Goodwin?
Here.
Mrs. Judge?
Here.
Mrs. Matlack?
Here.
Mrs. Seidel?
Here.
Mrs. Scarpolino?
Here.
Mrs. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Tomlinson?
Here.
Dr. Wong?
Here.
Dr. Dickinson?
Here. All right, first order of business tonight, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mrs. Sugars for our winter sports recognition. Let's get them out of there.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. First, I wanted to announce that Dr. Malash is not here this evening. He is in Washington, D.C. at the Leaders to Learn From conference. He's being honored as one of 12 leaders from across the country to learn from. So we're very happy for Dr. Malash, and he's sorry that he couldn't be here tonight because we have all these fine young athletes from East and West tonight. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mrs. Wilson.
Good evening. We are honoring tonight the Cherry Hill East boys swim team, the Cherry Hill East girls swim team, and the West wrestling team. What we're going to do is I will call your names. Mrs. Sugars will shake your hand, give you your certificate. Then you'll go around, shake hands with each of our board members, starting with Dr. Wong. Go around that way. Then you'll shake hands with our administrators, starting with Mrs. Adrian on this end. Go down there and out the door, and then Dr. Mahan is going to take your group picture out front. Parents, if you want to take pictures, you're welcome to, and then you are free to go unless you want to stay and come back and watch the rest of the meeting. So we will start with the Cherry Hill High School East boys swim team, as I said, who, yes. This year, they won their 10th straight New Jersey Group A sectional championship for the season and were state runners-up under the direction of Coach Joe Cuccinati. Justin Anderson, I know there are a lot who couldn't make it tonight. Jackson Brookover. David Chen. Anthony Chang. David Chang. Samuel Clark. Kurt Comer. Vincent DiFrancesco. Spencer Du Bois. Alvin Eisner. Justin Funari. Oh, Alvin. Charlie Hess. Andrew Hudson. Robert Irwin. Andrew Meyer. Anthony Moon. Andrew Murphy. Edward O'Riordan, William Quay, Jacob Schiff, Nate Scott, Michael Summerling, Tyler Tedesco, Jeffrey Tang, Robert Thompson, Michael Treglia, Alexander Volin, Jack Watson, and the managers from the team, Kira Mahoney, Kate Marcelli, Abigail Calistiero, Chloe Fritzsche, Julia Langmuir, Jessica Parkhill, Sydney Simmons, and Mia Tahan. And next we have the Cherry Hill High School East Girls Swim Team. Yes.
Okay. Max Lee, Liam Vasey, Gian Santiago, and James Wynn. Come on, James. Let's shake your hand, Zach. Let's shake your- thank you very much.
All right, next we have the Cherry Hill East Girls Swim Team. The girls achieved back-to-back finishes this year and last year as New Jersey Group A sectional champions. Also were state runners-up under the direction of Coach Anita Bowser. And we'll start with Isabel Andino. Ann Beam. Carissa Campbell. Catherine Cotter. She was here. Samantha Dayton. Brianna DeSanti. Annie Dollarton. Tatiana George. Georgia Gray. Mary Gray. Nicole Harms. Catherine G. Amanda Marsh. Alexandra McCormick. Claire McFadden. Carolyn Murch. Abby Mogul. Atina Movijiban. Grace Morrow. Ashley Ong. Whoops. Thank you. Kylie Priest. Erin Quay. Rachel Roof, Sabrina Rounds, Lily Smith, Catherine Suarez, Carolyn Wong, Nicolette Warrington, and Grace Yoon. Chelsea Yang, all right, last but not least, the Cherry Hill High School West wrestling team, who were Group 4 South finalists under the direction of Coach Zach Seymour, who has been named District 26 and Region 7 Coach of the Year. We'll start with Xavier Barker, Carl Eberhardt, Kyle Edwards, John Howe,
Good job, John. Congratulations.
Willie Mack, Jason Peralta,
Well done, Jason. Congratulations.
Jaden Reyes,
Well done, Jaden. Congratulations.
Eric Reyes Munoz,
Good job, Eric. Congratulations.
Aiden Rhodes,
Well done, Aiden. Congratulations.
Joseph Rohde,
Good job, Joseph. Congratulations.
Braden Romanos, Dimitri Serrano,
Well done, Dimitri. Congratulations.
Robert Silver Cohen,
Nicely done, Robert. Congratulations.
Massimo Sullivan,
Well done, Massimo. Congratulations.
Shane Thompson,
Well done, Shane. Congratulations.
Sean Tyler,
Nicely done, Sean. Congratulations.
Dominic Umarino,
Good job, Dominic. Congratulations.
Joseph Umarino,
Well done, Joseph. Congratulations.
and managers Olivia Cohen, McKenna Paulin, and Paige Tambusi.
Good job, Paige.
All right, I believe that's everybody. Thank you very much.
Nothing for the agenda this evening? You'll have another open comment period later in the meeting. Okay. All right. Well, seeing none, we'll move into our second presentation this evening, and I'll turn the mic over to Mrs. Sugars.
So tonight we have with us the Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Education Committee to present their 5-year plan with Dr. Chapman and Mr. Mr. Guy from Rosa.
Greetings to everyone. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to make a brief presentation of the Cherry Hill Public Schools Cultural Proficiency, Equity, Character Education 5-year working document. This is a working document that has been evolving for more than a year through the work of a dedicated advisory committee, some of whom you will meet tonight. Members of this committee are all volunteers with full-time jobs, but who somehow find the time to support this initiative. We are truly grateful and appreciative for their willingness to do this work. So why do we do this work? Look at our student body profile as of October 15th, 2017. Our district is more diverse than ever. And this is good. Much different from when I arrived here 23 years ago. Diverse communities are not melting pots. They are more like a salad bowl. We learn to accept differences, work, learn, and play together. Number 2, reason. We want to continue our journey to improve the culture of our community. More guns may not be the answer. How many armed campus police will we need? We believe that our work and training in cultural proficiency, equity, character education, with a focus on our core values of respect, responsibility, and citizenship, are strategies that can assist us in living, learning, and working together. As our superintendent, Dr. Malash, says, safety is our number 1 priority. Michelangelo said many years ago, our problem is not that we aim too high, it is that we aim too low. We are aiming high to reach the minds, hearts, and souls of those in our district. We have provided you with a copy of our 5-year working document, a copy of this PowerPoint, and a copy of our schedule of professional development for this school year. So with that in mind, let's turn to our PowerPoint. What is our vision? In keeping with the Cherry Hill School District commitment to the pillars of character education, namely respect, responsibility, and citizenship, Our vision is to develop a cultural proficiency, equity, character education 5-year plan that address the goals, structure, initiatives necessary to strengthen our school community. We are committed to creating a school climate and culture in which diversity is considered an asset and resource for personal and academic achievement. Our purpose is to teach our children and ourselves to live, learn, and work together in a vibrant and diverse world in which mutual respect is the foundation. What is cultural proficiency? Cultural proficiency is a mindset, a worldview, the way a person or an organization makes assumption for effectively describing, responding to, and planning for issues that are in diverse environments. For some people, cultural proficiency is a paradigm shift from viewing cultural difference as problematic to learning how to interact effectively with other cultures. Cultural proficiency training should first allow individuals to know where they stand in regards to their own culture, beliefs, and values. What is equity? Equity is equality of opportunity with a focus on outcomes and results. Equity causes us to bring attention to addressing the needs of all students and a recognition that not all students are the same. Educational equity ensures that all students have access to high-quality learning experiences. What is character education? Character education is a proactive effort by schools, districts, and states to instill in students important core ethical and performance values. It provides long-term solutions to critical issues that are challenging to our society and our schools. In our district, we focus on our core values of respect, responsibility, and citizenship. If there's one thing we want you to leave here with tonight, and that is knowing what our core values are. And our core values are respect, responsibility, and citizenship. As you walk out of the door, we want you to know what our core values are and be able to tell the world what they are. So the purpose of our 5-year working document is to support the Cherry Hill Public Schools mission statement and board goals. The board goals we have selected are goal number 1, which is continue to improve student achievement at all grade levels for all students and decrease achievement gaps where they exist. And goal number 3, enhance communication and relationships with internal and external stakeholders. So our working document, our 5-year working document, consists of 7 goals. Each goal has a set of action steps that describes the responsible party, resources, measurement, how we will know we're working towards our goal, date to begin, date due, and modifications. So, to give us a brief description and some work on goal 1, we'll ask Principal George Guy to come.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Thank you, Board of Education. Thank you, Dr. Malash, in your absence. Dr. Malash has been instrumental in the work that we have been able to produce with our 5-year working document. For goal number 1, what we have been able to do is we have been able to coalesce this group together and to provide district or teams at all 19 of our schools, elementary and secondary schools, that have already experienced some professional learning from the district's consultant on cultural proficiency, character education, and equity, Dr. Barbara Moore Williams. So our secondary schools have undergone one of the trainings, and our elementary schools have undergone two of the trainings, and we have a second training scheduled for our 6 to 12 teams in May. So we're very, very excited about the work that we've been able to do with coalescing these 19 school groups, giving them some professional learning and some growth as it relates to putting together information for goal number 1. So to talk a little bit about goal number 2, in the absence of our co-chair, Dr. Kafanya from Carusi, we have the able-bodied Mr. Jim Reardon from Stockton, who will talk about goal number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. I appreciate the time for this evening. So, in the interim, we've had some cards printed for him, which will be available by the end of this meeting as well, George. So we will not let that down in any way, shape, or form. So I will make sure we don't let that down in any way, shape, or form. So thank you, Mr. Guy. Thank you, Dr. Chapman. I'm here in place of Dr. Kafanya tonight. He has a ball game for his son. So there is a subcommittee that's part of the second goal, and I got together with Dr. Kafanya, and I have a statement that I would just like to read in regards to it. Goal number 2 is focused on the recruitment, hiring, and retention of staff of color. To date, we have made progress in actively identifying anticipated openings well in advance of our past practice. This has allowed the active recruitment efforts to attract great candidates. This effort has been done in cooperation with Human Resources Department and our district administrators during recurring monthly discussions at meetings and our attendance at job recruitment fairs. And I know the HR department sets up a number of job recruitment fairs, and I was just at one about 3 weeks ago up at Monmouth College. In our last Cultural Proficiency Equity Character Education meeting, we had an opportunity to hear from students regarding ways to have their voices better included in our efforts to recruit not only for tomorrow's future teachers, but also tomorrow's future community members, parents, and advocates for education. This new lens will open up many doors to provide more opportunities for involvement by many people who have valuable insights and voices that need to guide our efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon. And now to talk a little bit about goal 3 is the esteemed gentlewoman from the Rose International Middle School, Lynn Vospikian.
I guess I'm Mrs. Rosa. So, good evening, and thank you again to the board and to administration for giving us this time. So, goal 3, as it is up there, is the goal. The focus is to increase the cultural proficiency of all teachers, administrators, and staff through the adoption and implementation of a framework for culturally responsive teaching and learning. It's a very ambitious goal, as you can see. We're trying to really support our teacher leader teams that have begun working on better education in this area so they can turn key into all 19 schools. We're looking at PD, we're looking at online resources for everyone in district. We're looking at curriculum and instruction and how we see the lens of our texts and curriculum and resources and how that interfaces with our students and our teachers' perspectives. We've had a very active group on goal 3. In addition to the teacher leader group trainings, we've been working on some signs, posters, resources that go into all 19 schools that really gives an accurate list of characteristics of what it means to be culturally responsive. We're developing, like I said, a library of literature and online resources to implement cultural competency. We're working on an in-house survey to measure cultural proficiency so we can really get at staff perceptions, cultural belief systems, cultural self-assessment. We're doing this through Google surveys for staff. We will be doing it with students as well. We're developing an equity walkthrough that can be used in all 19 schools so we can assess ourselves. We are promoting the use of restorative practice to address bias that sort of filters into disciplinary measures in the schools, especially the secondary levels. And we're happy to say we're going to be meeting next week with Dr. Mahan and all the curriculum supervisors to really discuss the lens through which cultural proficiency is viewed and applied in curriculum and instructional practice. So Goal 3 has had a very big task. We will continue to chip away at this, but good things are happening, and we're excited to have your support. So thank you so much.
And for Goal 4, we have the esteemed principal from one of our outstanding schools, Karen Rockhill.
Dr. Chapman. I'd like to ask Rose Casey to join me up here, as well as Barbara Wilson. The three of us did work on this goal together. And Goal 4 states that we're going to increase outreach for the purpose of improved student achievement through community engagement with parents and community members of diverse backgrounds. So we kind of split the work up a little bit. It's a pretty lofty goal. So I took on action steps 1, 2, 4, and 8, and Barbara took the rest. And here's Rose Casey right here. So action step number 1 was to develop a district-wide network that gives all families resources and provides multiple opportunities for engagement in our school programs. And the district has done fairly well with this goal. They already have instituted that registration department here at Malberg uses a voice translate program to communicate with limited English speakers. The website also has a Google Translator built into it, which is very helpful for many of our families. The district contracts with Para Plus for translation services, and also our district provides workshops for immigrant and ESL families. So those are all very positive steps. And each school can also hone their own resources depending on their own needs, such as translation services at open houses, back to school nights, park information nights, and the like. Action step number 2, provide information about the cultures represented and resources available within our school communities. For that, we have our own Barbara Wilson. She has placed this information on the district website. It's updated each year. We also had the Performance Matters demographic information, and Val Sadwin also is a resource in this area. And again, each school can create their own resources for their teachers and their staff. And I can speak from Barclay. We have created culture language binders for the top 5 languages in our building, so that teachers can readily go in and read about some of the customs and common words for that language, some greetings, phonetic greetings so they can greet the parents when they arrive at their doors, and also some comfort words for our little students, because they may need some words that they recognize from home when they're feeling a little, upset at school. After all, they're preschoolers, so they might need a little comfort in TLC. Number 4, develop effective ways to engage families who do not attend open houses or other school meetings to share information, find out their interests and needs related to helping students succeed. And you realize, of course, that our board meetings have live feeds, so people can tune into them. Also, Dr. Malash has been hosting those Saturday coffees all throughout the district, and also through our guidance counselor intake program. And finally, number 8, begin planning to publicize and invite parents and guardians to become involved with efforts to close the district's achievement gap, develop ways for them to collaborate on solutions. And the district has met this action step through the Title I meetings that are held at each of the Title I schools, as well as through the Title I district-wide meeting. So, Barbara, I'm going to turn it over to you now for your action steps.
Okay, so our action step number 3 refers to creating a handbook to be distributed to the community and on the Cherry Hill website. That's in the very beginning stages. We will be publishing that by August of 2018. And We also are putting together a list of ambassadors for the district, just to make contact with our various groups throughout the community. This would be anyone from parents to guidance counselors to staff members, that sort of thing. This also is ongoing. We're working on that right now. We're also committed to incorporating monthly stories representing, this would be action step number 6. Monthly stories representing multicultural, multi-ethnic stories in the CHIPS Weekly e-newsletter. And this has already started. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot to cover, much more than monthly, where we are showing the true scope of our district. So you can see that in the monthly e-newsletter, which you all get through your email. It's a subscription service through the community, so we have community members who get it, and our entire staff receives that as well. And what am I missing, Karen? Yes, I apologize. I'm missing a page from my own paperwork. So we're also working on having our website reflect the inclusivity of the district, not only pictorially, but also in news items that are up there. If I were able to, I could show you, but if you go on the district website, you'll see on the slideshow, I'm very cognizant when I'm putting up pictures to show the diversity in our community. So anything that relates to children working in the classroom or activities, sports, that sort of thing, I'm very cognizant to make sure that that is showing. As I told our group, sometimes we'll have pictures from certain events here where we'll have recognitions that perhaps that group is not quite so culturally inclusive, but otherwise I'm very cognizant of that. And I believe that covers our action steps, correct? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen, Barbara, and Rose. So, goal statement number 5, the co-chairs are myself and Rick Michiosa. Unfortunately, Mr. Michiosa, the principal of Sharp, is unable to be with us today, so I will talk a little bit about what it is that we are trying to do. Goal statement number 5 really focuses in on students and how they are involved, or how we help support their involvement with culturally proficient, culturally responsive, and equitable and character education practices. And a lot of our focus has been around equitable and culturally proficient practices that they already are experiencing. A good amount of our work so far has been with High School East and High School West students that come to our monthly meetings with our 2 student advocates, Yanel Holliday and Ashley Giles. And they have been able to provide us with a lot of feedback about some of the equitable and culturally responsive practices that they have been a part of, and then things that we as a school district may be missing and we need to expand ourselves with. So they gave us ideas about surveys that we wanted to give out to our administrative staff in all 19 of our schools to talk about some of those culturally responsive and culturally proficient and equitable practices that adults put in place for students, but that are also students to students. So we just got that particular survey approved, and we'll be sending that out in the course of the next month to get some more feedback akin to Mrs. Vospikian's work around equity walkthroughs, to give us some ideas on how we move forward with supporting student work around culturally proficient practices and equitable practices. Now, here to talk a little bit about goal number 6 is the gentlewoman from Cooper Elementary School, Principal Rebecca Tiernan.
Thank you, George. Thank you to the board for having us and for your continued support with this work. Goal 6 really is intended to take a look at our practices as a system and our policies. So making sure that the policies we have in place as a district will support the work that we're trying to do through professional development, the work that we're trying to do with our students. I've had the pleasure of working with Mrs. Matlack and Dr. Campisi on Goal 6. And our first step with this goal is to look at current policies and review those policies from the lens of cultural proficiency and equity. really kind of digging into the language, ensuring that these policies will support the practices that we're hoping to see in our schools. So we have had the pleasure of taking a look at many of the policies in place, and we're really fortunate to have had so many of our policies go through Strauss-Esme that we're finding that they're really well written in terms of the work that we're doing. Bless you. They're really well written in terms of the work that we're doing. So in looking at that, in the second step of our goal is to decide, are there policies that we don't have in place at this point that might be necessary? And as we dug a little bit deeper, we kept coming back to practices throughout the district. So maybe looking at the code of conduct, are there practices in application of the code of conduct that may need to be looked at? And so what we've kind of realized through this process is that we're going to need feedback from our other subcommittees working with the professional development, the subcommittees working with the students and getting the student feedback, and then having those committees kind of provide feedback to us about where we may recognize some additional policies could be recommended to the board. So at this point, we're still in an information gathering stage. We'll continue to work with Dr. Campisi, and Mrs. Matlack and I will continue our work with the other subcommittees to decide if any recommendations would be warranted to make to the board. Thank you very much.
And lastly, goal number 7. All Cherry Hill Public Schools, notice we said all Cherry Hill Public Schools will make a proactive effort to promote the core and performance values of respect, responsibility, and citizenship in students and staff members. So we are using character education to develop character, and we feel that there's a lot of payoff with that. To date, I would like to share with you that we presently have 7 of our schools who are national schools of character. And just this month, we have Bret Hart that is up for national school. Our district is up for national district, and Sharp just received the state award, and they too are up for national award. In addition to that, this year we submitted promising practice from 7 schools to be shared nationwide. So we are moving in terms of character education, and we are very, very proud of the work of all of our staff and our students, as well as our parents. Mr. Guy, if you would go to the last slide because of time. Here are the names of a lot of folks who have dedicated themselves. The list is not complete because we keep adding all of the time. But these are very dedicated folks who have given their time and their energy. And we are so happy to be associated with them. And we will continue to work on this 5-year plan. We're now into the 2nd year of it. And we will continue to work and work and work and work. Thank you for your continued support. And if you have any questions, I'm going to call all members of our team to come up and stand with me. So if you have any questions, we are ready. Members of our team, please come up. All members of our team, please come up. Have any questions you would like to ask of us?
Dr. Chapman, I would like to just ask you if you could tell the rest of the board about the students who have been coming to our meetings and why they're there and what they've contributed.
Okay. Mr. Guy is our expert in that, so I'm going to ask him to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Matlack. So they are students of color from East and West. They work with our student advocates. Ashley Giles is the student advocate from High School West, and Yanel Holiday is the student advocate from High School East. And what they've been doing is, as we go through these 7 goals, they give us critical feedback as it relates to the goals, how they've experienced the goals as students themselves, and what kinds of things we could be doing to work and expand upon the goals. You heard Mr. Reardon speak intimately through Dr. Cafanya's voice about the students at our last meeting, giving us information about hiring, retention, staff of color, promoting things at the high school level, both East and West, clubs that we'll be looking at probably in 2018, 2019 to deal with future Teachers of America, so that we can begin expanding our pipeline of teachers of color from feedback that we get from students like we get from High School East and West. So they've been invaluable in terms of helping us understand and critically align some of the things in our benchmarks within our goals to make it more realistic, because the students is what it really is about. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Matlack? You're welcome.
Is there a documented or easy way for, like, if there's community members that want to get involved, is there a way or that they can, or is it?
Yes. Just direct them to get in touch with me, and we'll be happy to put them to work. Happy.
Okay, well, I understand that part. But I mean, like, as far as communication, is it on the website or anything? Like, if someone wanted to get involved, if they were just looking and wanted to get involved, how would they do that?
There is a plan to put this on the website. We were actually waiting until we did this presentation to the board, but it will be on the website. Right now we have a cultural proficiency button, so to speak, under our curriculum tab on the website, which is a presentation from, I believe, 2016 that Dr. Mahan and Mrs. Wethington did. We will be updating that with the current information that we have, and it will be updated regularly as we do our work so that people can see that. I will be publicizing it as well on social media, in our newsletter, perhaps an email blast as we go forward. Dr. Malash will be talking about it at his various meetings and his online lunch and that sort of thing. So we will be getting out the word. We were just waiting until we did the official presentation tonight.
Thank you so very, very much for your time and for your support. We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chapman and Mr. Guy from Rosa. I appreciate that. Obviously, a lot of hard work going into that plan. Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight on the C&I agenda, we have campaign, technology update, and middle school summer reading update. We are going to table the campaign conversation until the April 30th C&I meeting. So we're going to move right into the technology portion of the meeting. We were asked by Dr. Malash to give an update to you in regards to technology. What have we done so far? Follow up for next year, and then to share information with you about a one-to-one initiative for teachers. So you received in the March 13th Friday memo information from a memo from me directed to Dr. Malash that was shared with you in regards to a recent technology purchase. As you are aware, this is the first year that technology and the Office of Curriculum and Instruction have been connected. So we just wanted to provide you with a quick update. So Mr. Plavinsky, who is here with me, he and I will go back and forth. We'll share the microphone and just talk about some things that have recently happened in the district that we are really proud of. over the last 7 months?
So starting off, you've seen some changes in our smart board technology, smart technology as we call it. We've implemented a new software package from Smart Technologies that we can make enhanced use of classroom interactivity. And we've also changed over our boards from traditional smart boards to interactive flat panels, as Smart refers to them. Some of those are out in our schools right now, and all future purchases of smart boards will be interactive flat panel TVs instead of the traditional board and projector combination.
So the next item we'll discuss is you are all aware that we have park testing and that we needed additional devices in order to be able to test all of our students, because one of the things that we have heard over the last 3 years, now 4 years, is that the testing window for park is too long. So this year, many of you are aware that we have drastically condensed the park testing schedule, but we've been able to do that because we have purchased in the last few months probably over 2,000 devices. And those devices, we want to be sure that we just don't have devices sitting. So we have created a share program where the devices are actually deployed to schools during the academic year, and then for special projects that are going on across K-12 spectrum, and then we pull those devices back around this time, and then they are used for park testing, and then they're redeployed. So we're very proud of that, to make sure that the technology is utilized on a day-to-day basis and that we're increasing our students' access to devices.
We've also have been working to align our purchases of network equipment with the federal E-rate funding cycle, so we can make additional usage of when we purchase network equipment and upgrade our network equipment throughout the district, that we have opportunities to make additional usage of federal funds to support them.
So some of you are aware, one thing that we have been having a lot of conversations about communication, and one of the things that we did this year was reached out directly to the Cherry Hill Education Foundation, because they do provide a significant amount of technology to our schools. Mark and I, or Mr. Plavinsky and I, presented to Mrs. Bassnagel and to Mrs. Stoffman. In a brief meeting, we were able to take them into a building. We showed them what an interactive flat panel is and some of the other technology that we have, and explained to them the connection now between the Office of Curriculum and Instruction and the Office of Technology. And recently we presented to the entire foundation board here at Malberg. We took them on a tour and showed them as well an interactive flat panel, shared with them some of the initiatives that we have going with technology. And then we also have a more hands-on role in all of the technology proposals or grants that are submitted to SCHEF, to make sure that they are aligned with the district vision and that our platform is able to support any of the technology that is coming into the district. And more importantly, we want to make sure that the technology is actually innovative, because at this point, it is our expectation that devices such as a Chromebook, that's not innovative. So how are you using the device, and what other devices can we bring into the school that are innovative? So that's really what they should be looking for when they receive these SCHEF grants.
Back in January, Dr. Mahan and I had an opportunity to speak with the project lead for the New Jersey Future Ready Schools Initiative. And we are exploring with a few of our schools that program and obtaining that certification for a group of schools at a time, as per the recommendation. We've recently had a Google Hangout using the technology to meet with the project lead, who's at NJIT, so saving some travel there, and all of us from different locations, and not taking having our principals join us from their schools. A few of them, they were able to discuss what the Future Ready initiative involved, and get some more information on that. And we're beginning those discussions of what we would need to do to obtain that certification. Sure. We also, many of you, Mrs. Wilson mentioned our district email blast system, our Blackboard district notification system. We've also been making additional use of that system now down into our school levels, where our principals have the opportunity to use that system to send text messages and emails. And to date, we've received very positive feedback from the schools, and we are continuing to roll that out on a school-by-school basis to make better use of a standardized system for email and text communication that's easy to use for the principals, and better received, make sure that the messages are better received on the community end.
So in line with Blackboard, we always want to make sure that the principals have a voice in things that we are rolling out for technology. And we recently had some concerns in regards to elementary passwords. So the students have to log into their device. And we have already piloted at 2 schools where students have case sensitive or unique passwords. There had been some concern that, you know, our kindergarten, first grade students may not be able to remember them, and you'd be surprised they can. So it has taken away some of the headaches that we have had with students, you know, hey, I think if my password is this, Johnny's password must be, and students being able to access other students' Google Drives and platforms that we use. So the one good thing about the last 2, the Blackboard and the security updates with the passwords, is that Mark and I reached out to about 4 to 6 schools, and we kind of kept it under wraps. We just reached out to them, and at a principals meeting, someone actually said, hey, are you guys using this great thing? And that's how the word began to spread. So we're happy that we have momentum and that it's not us pushing these initiatives forward, that the principals are really owning them and that they are taking ownership of the technology in their schools and the initiatives that we're trying to roll out. So, and then the last one, which took a significant amount of coordination between the Office of Curriculum Instruction, Office of Technology, Office of Pupil Services, the Superintendent's Office, and with Barbara Wilson, is online registration for kindergarten and first grade students. So that was a huge undertaking, and you know, we would not have been able to do that without all of the departments really coming together to review all of the forms, to make sure that we have copiers and fax machines and everything available in the tech lab where all the registration happens, having Chromebooks and devices set up so for parents who do not have access when they come, we can quickly say, were you able to complete your forms online? If they did not have a seat, we have a kiosk set up for you with everything that you need. So that, again, was a huge undertaking. Do we still have some things that we can improve upon? Absolutely, but it is a major step from where we were last year at this time. And I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, and I will echo that was a great collaborative effort amongst multiple departments to bring that online and try to streamline that process as much as possible. There's a lot of information that we collect for kindergarten registration and new student registration, and hopefully this was something that was a balance of making it easy for the community to go online and access the information and enter it, and also for us to then be able to process it and reliably use the information in the systems that we have. And again, it was a very big collaborative effort with multiple meetings and multiple departments, and we're, I think, having completed kindergarten registration at this point, knowing that we've completed kindergarten registration, we had very positive feedback from it.
So all of that since our marriage in July. So we feel like we have, you know, completed a significant number of tasks in a very short period, and we well, hopefully Mark continues looking forward to work with me. I do continue to look forward to work with him. So follow up for next year, we are already talking about additional bandwidth, and one of the things that, you know, having me responsible for technology, Mark has given me a lot of technology vocabulary. So additional bandwidth, our internet bandwidth across all of our schools. We already did that at the high schools. We're continuing that work at the middle schools, and we've already completed that work and started at the elementary school, so we're excited about that. We mentioned Google certifications. We actually just sent something out today because we do meet on a weekly basis for Google certification, because we want to make sure that first all of our administrators are equipped to know how to use the platform, and then from there trickle down to all other users across the district. So we are providing level 1 and level 2 training to all administrators as well as to all techs in the district, because we are, one of the things we did not include on the list is really trying to hone in on the skill sets that all of our techs have across the district, that they are not just seen as people who fix things, but they can actually contribute to the technology advancements across the district. The next one, again, is the expansion of the communication system and the district notification system and the elementary password security updates, so we can expand that to all 12 elementary schools. So the big one that you received information about in your Friday memo is in regards to
a technology initiative for teachers. We are looking to provide a device for every certificated staff member in the district, which you saw in the memo. And you know, we have worked, again, there was a small committee that was put together to make sure that we were addressing the needs of the respective levels, and then that we were providing devices that would meet the needs of the teachers and the students on those levels. We are currently working on a professional development plan as well as a deployment plan. So in thinking about having approximately 1,000 certificated staff, what will that look like in terms of deployment? Because Mark and I agree on one thing, and I think it is keeping us up at night, is that if this does not go well, it will be come back on the both of us. So we really want this to go well. We are both highly organized, and we want to make sure that the process is seamless for the teachers who are receiving the devices, and it's not something that adds more stress. So everything from making sure that they are tagged and labeled, that they are personalized for the user that is receiving them, that they understand the expectations for the use of the device during the year, and then where to go for support. So all of that, coupled with the professional development aspect, is what we are currently working and thinking about on a daily basis, knowing that our timetable is to have these devices in the hands of all teachers before they leave for the summer. So it is a tight timeline, especially because we are starting Park next week, and we have all of these additional devices coming in. It's ambitious, but we do think that we can handle it, and we're excited for the possibilities that Office of Technology, Office of Curriculum and Instruction can make and have.
You know, lots of devices coming in for the staff are both our team, and I'm very lucky to have a very skillful team behind me and working collaboratively to make sure that these devices are configured right and supported, and they're very energized to be able to work with the devices and work with the staff, and with those Google certifications as part of it. The whole picture is coming together, and we have a lot of work ahead of us with Park, and a lot of work ahead of us with these the device deployments, but we're very excited about it. The team's very excited about it, and we hope that when the staff get them, it begins that transformation that we're looking for.
So hopefully that covered what we've done, follow up for next year, where we're going, and one-to-one initiative for teachers. Any questions? Mrs. Seidel?
It's partially a question, but the other part is to say thank you. Clearly, you've done a lot of work in a short period of time, and all of this sounds amazing, so thank you for that. I'm particularly excited to hear you mention the Future Ready School certification. I had an opportunity about a year ago to see a Future Ready School present at a New Jersey School Boards Association meeting, and some really cool, exciting, and innovative stuff. So I'm excited to see what we can do to achieve that certification. At that meeting, they did mention, somebody floated out there, that there might be some grant opportunities available for Future Ready Schools in the future. Have you heard anything additional on that?
I have not, particularly in that.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, we heard that there may be some cuts in funding. So the person who, yeah, sorry to be the bearer of the bad news, but the gentleman who we were able to connect with from NJIT is saying that they will be continuing the work, that he does not work for the DOE, he works for NJIT, and that it is still his mission to move forward the Future Ready certification. So that's kind of where we're at. I haven't heard of any grants in particular.
I'm going to go back through my notes and contact the person that said that, but thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you. Thank you. All right. So the next item on the CNI agenda is follow-up for the middle school summer reading. So tonight we have with us Ms. Katsikis and Mrs. McCartney. They are going to come up and share. I'm going to hand them out.
So Allison McCartney and I are excited to come back. We hope that you enjoyed. We joined you last month and brought forth some new titles for middle school. see if you had any follow-up questions on the new titles, and hope that you are ready to move that forth for board approval. The first title was Fish in a Tree, which was going forth for thumbs up.
I mean, I read it. It was interesting, and definitely a change of pace in the type of reading that I do. But yeah, it was a good book.
Okay. Great. Counting by Sevens was the 7th grade text. Any questions?
No, but I got done reading it and my daughter quizzed me to make sure that I read the book. So she actually loved it. So
the other 7th grade text was The Boys in the Boat.
So I forgot to bring my book tonight because I didn't get to go home after work. But I enjoyed it, and I involved my 8th grade student in the reading of it as well, and she gave it a thumbs up as well.
And The Running Dream, the 8th grade. Oh, she's not here today. Okay, that's good. The Running Dream, yes. The Running Dream, yes. And then the other element we talked about the last month was the draft of the middle school summer reading. If all 4 titles were to go forth, the choices and the assignments for as accepted if the titles were to go forth. Questions about the middle school summer reading drafted going forth as is. So then we have high school today.
to follow up what you say to keep the list fresh. So whether we should consider some non-fictions, particularly on themes like social justice, right? I mean, so that's just.
Absolutely. I don't think we have any particular nonfiction this year. We do have them in 8th grade. We do have Boys in a Boat, historical nonfiction, and we certainly ask students, you know, to at least read one. I think if you look, we include the description so that the students can kind of get a taste of the book. There are various authors, various backgrounds. We try to vary the ethnicities of the characters just to really show different characters as we have different students.
So it's been a while since I've been on CNI, but a while ago when I was on CNI, we had parental concerns on some of the books, and one of them on the list is on first 12th grade is one of the ones that we reviewed, One Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which 2 board members read it along with a teacher from East, a teacher from West, and we had a discussion about it. And it was recommended by the parental unit to ban the book, several books, but this was one of them, and that's what caught my eye, is looking at this list. We did not, but the child was given an alternate. So just throwing it out there that that may happen again.
But
So.
we do have the policy in place, and certainly we would have that. And we have had other texts that were questioned.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly follow that if we do. Didn't leave it on. It does follow the same theme. I mean, we could revisit it.
I'm not recommending revisiting it. I'm really not. I was just more of a heads up. I actually learned more about that book reading it as an adult than I did when I was in high school. And I remember the other board member and I, because the teachers said they were senior teachers, for the class anyway, which is for this. And she said, we didn't even consider the Christianity aspect of it. We don't even talk about that. And we looked at each other and said, what? And it was just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I really don't recommend pulling it off. I just, cause, you know, there is some hard topic in that book, and other books also, The Namesake and others. But I mean, just leave it, you know, leave it. I'm just putting it out there that perhaps you may get a complaint or two, but you probably maybe not, you know.
I think all books tend to have some controversy.
Absolutely. Life of Pi could too. Yes. Yes.
I think we should, and I think
So I want to say again, I don't want you to take it off the list. I really don't. I really don't, because it's a great book. You know, it's a great book.
Yes. Will allow students, you know, I'm into this. One other thing I wanted to mention is
think you mentioned something about this, but I just want to clarify that I know, at least particularly in the high school level, having a high schooler, that if different teachers teach the same course, the same level, some don't even look at the summer reading work, and others grade it pretty harshly. And comparisons between classes. So it's, is there going to be some consistency in this because it does cause issues between, like, students get upset and things like that?
Yes, it was. I enjoyed it. It was a quick read, but thought very appropriate. Nothing objectionable or anything. So I'm good.
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Mahan. We'll move on to BNF. You want to pick it up, or you want me to just hand it directly to
hand it
directly to Mrs. Sugars?
So we have two items on our agenda tonight. One item we wanted to talk about, I asked Mrs. Ridgway to update us on the food service management renewal process. We've talked about this at BNF a little bit, about how the process has changed. Timing is everything. Of course, we're at the end of our 5-year contract, so we're falling into this category this year. So I asked Mrs. Ridgway to give us a little bit more detail about that process and how it's different, and some ways that we're dealing with some of the differences as we move through this process.
Good evening. As Mrs. Sugars was saying, we are in the last year of our 1-year contract, 4-year renewal process, so we're in the 5th year. Timing is everything, and the state has changed due to federal audits the way that the contracts will be issued. Instead of doing their cost reimbursement, which has been many a year we've been doing cost reimbursement, we're switching over to a fixed price contract. What that means with a fixed price contract is that it will never vary. It'll be a fixed price per meal that we will be charged. Same process though, it is a 1-year awarded contract with the anticipation of 4 renewals. Both parties can decide not to renew. Being this is a new year, this is going to be something that we're all going to be testing. We're working with the State Department of Agriculture to implement this. There's only 23 districts in the state that are taking on the fixed price contract next year. Right now, we are in the process of developing the RFP. We plan to have it out on the street within about 2 weeks. It'll be open for proposals to be received for 20 days, and on the 20th day, we will close and proceed to go through the evaluative process. The evaluative process is measured by 3 criteria: price, technical, and managerial. We have a committee that will sit and review based upon that criteria and come up with the award to be presented to the board. We hope to have everything finalized by June 12th. Any questions? Managerial. Okay. Technical would be, they would be giving us how they would be presenting the meals. They are going to do a walkthrough. Whoever wants to set a proposal in will be doing walkthroughs for our building, so they can be giving different ideas of how they would have the lines, what they would serve. The managerial part is how they would staff. You would present how you would do your public relations part of it and how you would sell the food. So there's those kind of variables that you would measure off of. The highest is price. It's 51% of the weight. And then you would split between the technical and the managerial part.
So I don't want to slight anything in terms of where we're at right now. But if there's been complaints, students, etc., I mean, does that weigh in terms of selection or what they're being offered? Does that weigh it all into the process, or is it strictly those three criteria?
It's strictly those three criteria. Even though it's an RFP process, it's almost like a blend, almost like a competitive contract. We have to follow that. It's not just price, but we have to follow those three criteria. Yes, ma'am.
So when you say fixed price, and that the meal is whatever the price is, that's what the meal is. So right now at least I think there's a requirement that you have to take a fruit and a milk and that's the price?
What the fixed price actually means is what we're paying.
What we're
paying to the management company.
Okay.
Okay, right now we're doing a cost reimbursement. So if you have your operating statement that we receive each month, you will see that there's different prices for each cost that they had that month. That is now changing, where when they submit their proposal, it's just a fixed price.
So is this change being made because it's anticipated that it will be cheaper for the districts, or administratively easier to manage? Like, why?
What had happened was the federal government had come in and audited not only school districts, but they audited the Department of Agriculture. And they found that some of the oversight, especially in areas of reimbursements and rebates, were lacking. And the federal government feels that this would be a better format. They worked with the state of New Jersey to develop this and feel that this would be a better way to go and have a better managerial tool. Questions?
It's one of the interesting things when I asked Lisa to put this presentation together. I asked her to come up with pros and cons, and she said, I can come up with lots of cons. I'm not so sure I can come up with too many pros. So there's 86 districts across the state, I believe, that are up this year in their contracts, and they have the option for one more year of doing it the old way. And I think some districts are probably opting to do that, but then they're going to have to turn around and put it back out again. So we decided that we would go with the new way and that we would volunteer to work with the Department of Agriculture, because we felt that that was probably, would kind of hold harmless, us through this process if we volunteered to work with them. And one of the things that we have been concerned about is the fact that the RFP just came out 2 weeks ago. The sample RFP just came out very recently. And so not only do we have to get that RFP together and get it out on the street, the food service management companies have to have time to respond to it. And so, June 12th is late, to be kind of making decisions. So, yeah, so, we're going to hold tight and take this ride and see where it goes, and, hope for the best and hope that in the long run, I know, lots of other states use this method, so, we're hoping in the long run, but what we think we will see is it will be difficult for the food service management companies when you're talking about a fixed price per meal. When you start up in the beginning of the year, there's a lot of fixed costs that you have to deal with. You have to buy food, you have to staff, you have to do other things. So, we think we're not so sure how beneficial this will be for the food service management companies. So, we shall see.
Definitely will.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ridgway. The other item on our agenda tonight for business and facilities, I wanted to speak to you about our property and liability insurance renewal. We are up this year to take a look at our property and liability insurance. We are in a joint insurance fund right now. Actually, we're in two. We are in the New Jersey School Insurance Group for our workers' comp insurance, and we are in the School Alliance Insurance Fund for the rest of our insurance, our property and liability insurance. Traditionally, the district has been in a joint insurance fund type arrangement, and usually that is a 3-year commitment, right? Because when you're talking about school districts coming together and pooling their resources together, you want more than a 1-year commitment to do that. So we're at the end of our 3 years. I have asked Connor Strong to take a look at the 2 that we're currently in, New Jersey SIG and SAFE. Also to look at another joint insurance fund, it's the BCIP JIF in the area, and also to look at a traditional insurance type arrangement where we get out of self-funding and look at a more traditional arrangement, just so that we can take a look at all of those options and see what they look like. I suspect that we'll probably stay within the self-insured type arrangement, but thought that it would be a good idea just to take a look at it and see what it looks like and see what is available to us right now. So I spoke to Mr. Kirk today from Connor Strong. Unfortunately, again, we do not anticipate being able to bring a recommendation to the board until the early June meeting. The School Alliance Insurance Fund will not release their rates until May 24th, and that's just after our late May meeting. So probably the June 12th meeting we'll be making decisions about that as well. Is there any questions about that? It's a little easier. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Looks like we have no HR items this evening to discuss. So we will move into P&L. And Dr. Campisi.
Good evening, everyone. So a couple of items for discussion tonight for P&L. The first is our 2000 series, which is programs. So each month I'm trying to work my way through at least 1 or 2 sections to make sure that we're up to date in everything. And then as policy alerts come in, I'll go back, make revisions, bring them to P&L committee, and we'll move forward from there. But as of right now, all of our 2000 series with programs, all those policies, the mandated policies and the mandated regulations are all up to date. So next month I'm going to tackle the 3000. I'm doing my best to try and do 2 a month. It just depends how many are in each section. Some could be a bit lengthy. Next up, we have the activity participation fee program. So by policy, we have to discuss the program at least once a year. And the program is carried out through the reg. So the packets I made up for you, you can see where I gave you the policy and I gave you the reg. So right now our participation fees are at $70 for the middle school, $80 for the high school, and it's a $150 cap per family, and that's at both levels. I tried to do some data analysis for us, and it looks like somewhat like a memo that I drafted out for you. So I sent out an email, a short survey about 4 questions to about 500 districts. I tried to get everybody in the state, and I thought I would get a good response, and I got 88 responses, so I actually feel pretty good about that, because when I did this last year, I got closer to 18, so feeling good. I broke everything down by school configuration, so whether it's a K-12 like we are, whether it's K-6, K-8, 7-12. The last page are all the schools that responded, including us, that have a participation fee. So it gives you an idea of where we are. Some schools chose to respond anonymously. They didn't want to identify. In order to make the survey more friendly, I didn't require a district's name to be put in there. I figured maybe that would help me get more responses. So what you can see is that Cherry Hill is comparable or below just about all the other districts that have a participation fee program. So by policy, what it says is the superintendent or superintendent's designee would make a recommendation to the committee, or in this case, committee of the whole. So after looking at all the data and looking at what we're comparable to and the other districts and funding other districts get and funding we do not get, I would think that the recommendation would be to keep the participation fees the same at each level along with the cap. So that would be the topic for discussion. And this would be for the 18-19 year, because by policy we have to have the discussion before the year begins. So typically April, May, we would have it for next year. So as you're digesting that, if we want to have the discussion or the dialogue or questions, Mr. Goodwin?
So am I understanding that based on this, what I'm looking at, it looks like not that many districts actually have a participation fee, or is that not an accurate interpretation of this?
So it's 88 total districts responded. And again, some of them didn't identify. So out of those 88, there were 18. Now we have over 500 school districts in the state. So it's the best data that I could get from my colleagues that I could present to you in the most transparent way possible. I do know that other districts that are underfunded have, like Kingsway Regional, they have higher student participation fee, activity fee amounts. There were a lot of schools that are a lot smaller than us that offer less, that charge more. There were some schools that don't have a cap, so you could be looking at easy $700 a year if you have 3 children, and they're at 3 different levels or 2 different levels, and they're playing 3 or 4 different sports. So I can't say that not a lot of schools have a participation program. I can just give you the data that I have, and it doesn't supplant what is in the sports budget. It's a revenue. It's for revenue, right? We got around like about 240,000, right? And our sports budget is somewhere around 2.5, 2.6 million. So it goes towards uniforms, referees, transportation, everything else that goes along with that. Because, and Ms. Sugars, you can correct me if I'm wrong, around 8% of the total budget is our sports fund, is dedicated to sports. Right. No, I'm sorry. Yes, the co-curricular. Did I take any other questions or concerns? I can surely go and do more research as well.
So we don't have a clue who is $300 with a 550 max. 550.
But only at the high school with the cap.
Wow. And then somebody, Ridgewood, who I do know the superintendent there, they've been doing this since 1994. This is interesting. What you do have is interesting.
It is. One of the things I tried to look at too was when the last time they had an increase or a decrease or anything like that was. Some of them, some things I took out where people wrote, don't remember, no clue, been here for years, was here when I got here. So I just left that as NA, that there hasn't been an increase. But yeah, the higher amounts, I'm assuming that may be why that they didn't want to identify who they were. Possibly they know we live stream. And when it's on the internet, it's on the internet forever. That would be my guess. But
and I don't see Kingsway here. Am I? But I'll go take a look on their website when I have a minute.
I'm going to make this part of a memo for Dr. Malash's Friday memo as well. I do know that Kingsway is around 100 It's 100, and then if they have a cap, it's higher, or it's like decreasing, like 100, then 75, then 50, something like that. I thought I put that in there, but I will definitely take a look at that. Sure.
I remember we've discussed this for the last couple of years. I don't recall, did we actually raise the fee over the last couple of years or not?
No, it has not been raised since
Okay.
The inception.
And there is a waiver in place for financial reasons that families can request to not pay this fee.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay. And like I said, I'll put this together in a little bit of a different fashion so I can submit it to Dr. Malash for his Friday memo to go home, so you have the data in front of you as well, and I'll find out where Kingsway is as well. Ready. We have a policy for a first reading this month. All right. So the policy is use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques for students with disabilities. And there's a policy and a regulation. So it's revised, and it's revised because of some legislation that was passed. And this is where this is somewhat of a paradox. So it changes the name, because the name of the policy used to be use of physical restraint. So now what's been mandated is that we have to add on and seclusion techniques for students with disabilities. However, we don't use seclusion. So any reference to seclusion in the policy and in the regulation has been struck and removed. There was also language in the draft policy and regulation about prone position when it comes to restraining students with disabilities, and we don't do that either. So that has been struck and taken out as well. What the legislation required is that in policy and regulation is that you have specifics towards interventions, written reports to parents after a restraint has to take place, that you start with verbal de-escalation, and that physical restraint is the last thing you do if a student is in imminent danger of hurting themselves or someone else. All of our site supervisors, all of our special ed supervisors, and our special ed teacher coach are all trainers. They can be trained to trainers, so they get trained annually, and they can come back and they train staff members as well. So the DOE is still required to come out with further guidelines. They haven't done that yet. So once they do, this will be updated further. So basically, even though the name has seclusion techniques, we don't use seclusion here. So it's a mandated policy. The program we use, it's called Safe and Positive Approaches, and that's what our staff is trained in the event they need to restrain. And if you look through the policy and you look through the regulation as to how our policy is carried out, you can see the steps that are taken. The legislation also gave more specific details and definitions as to what different things are, such as a timeout, such as what restraint is. When utilizing restraint, what a district will make sure occurs, and that's what their staff, and that's what our staff is trained in. So with that, on the policy as well, on page 2 of 3, you'll see it numerically goes out of order. I'm going to fix that, but the reason is because I wanted to make sure I made note that what would have been number 2 was where the seclusion part was, right? Seclusion, involuntarily putting a student in a room that's not a timeout. So that needed to come out because we don't practice that. I spoke with Mrs. Wethington a lot over this policy. We went, we reviewed it several times. We're doing all these things, so now we're just formalizing it as we move forward. Any questions on the policy or reg, Ms. Schultz?
So if we don't use seclusion techniques, can we not strike it from the name of the policy?
It's mandatory. And that's where it becomes a paradox, because it has to be named that, but we don't do that. So you know, if I find out further, or Mr. Green, if you hear anything further, feel free to send it my way, and I'll be happy to change the name back. Okay. And again, there's language in there, especially at the end where you can see the citation, that is just mandatory language that has to be put in. Any other questions? Yes.
So the name is mandatory, but the fact that we as a district don't do it, we can strike that out of the policy, because normally when they're mandated policies, I know we usually can't change a word, but in this case we can do that.
We can, because programmatically what we use doesn't involve seclusion or doesn't involve prone position. So because they're not things that are in legislation, we can strike them because they're not part of what we do in our special education program. Yes.
So this policy is to encourage staff members to intervene, or to not, going to the opposite? Because it says that staff member may ignore the behavior. So in that sense, then the staff member, how would the staff member do? I mean, if the student became very interruptive to the classroom order, and what then the person do?
So if you look in the regulation, if you look on page 3 of 5, there's interventions. These aren't all the interventions, but these are some. So there are some situations where ignoring a behavior is effective. Verbal redirection is effective. Sometimes just approaching a student in a non-confrontational manner is effective. Restraint is the last thing that should be used. And again, that's if a student is in imminent danger of hurting themselves or somebody else. So educators always need to intervene in some way, shape, or form, but only restrain when absolutely necessary. And they're trained in restraint as well. And then if a child is restrained, they have to be seen by the nurse. A report has to be done, has to go home to the parents. Also, anyone who does a restraint has to be checked out by the nurse as well. Did I take any other questions, or? Okay. Alrighty. And our second reading of our policies from last month are athletic competition, HIB, and student smoking. As we remember, our athletic competition was starting with the class of this year's 8th grade. We would not be sponsoring sports that weren't offered by the district. Again, that's this year's 8th grade, so next year's freshmen. Student smoking, that was signage. All it really was is contrasting signage to make sure that people knew that if they were smoking or using smokeless tobacco or anything like that, what the consequences would be, whether it be a fine, and also we have to put in our code of conduct as to how principals would handle that, because students aren't subject to fines. They're subject to disciplinary consequences. And then harassment, intimidation, and bullying. We had 8 areas that we had gone over and reported out. The most notable was when to start an HIB initiation, because we have some more leeway with that. So we'll be discussing that at our level meetings and laying out some training, with our principals, with our anti-bullying specialists, and moving forward towards that and keeping everybody in the loop as to how we progress forward with that. The other 7 things that were put in were it was just mandatory language that had to be put in. Imbalance of power, different things that relate to approved private schools for our out-of-district students. So all of that was reported out on and is ready for a second reading at our next action meeting. So with that, can I take any questions on P&L? Any more questions on P&L? I'm sorry. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Campisi. All right, so finally we'll close up with strategic planning. I don't know if you want me to pass it to you or directly to Mrs. Sugars. Okay, Mrs. Sugars.
asked me if I had my laptop. I said, no, I thought you were bringing it. Thank you, Mr. Bart, for having my back there. So after the excitement of all the stuff we've been talking about with the referendum, and I just wanted to let you know that the project applications after Dr. Dickinson and Dr. Malash got hand cramps from the several documents that they had to sign were hand delivered up to Trenton last week. So, you know, we're moving on to the next phase now. So that's very exciting. But I thought what we would do is just talk about some of the projects. We had a very busy week last week here in the district. We have a couple projects just going on right now. I thought we'd just go through them real quick and kind of let you know where we stand with some of them. At Barton, as you know, we've been doing the crawl space repair work. That project has been going very well. They are coming down the home stretch. They've done all of the foam application and the concrete application. And now they're working on the structural steel piece. So we anticipate that project, and fortunately we don't have any pictures for you of that, but we expect that project will be wrapping up probably in the next 2 weeks or so. At Kilmer, we did some site work this week, which I'll show you some pictures of. If you've ever been to Kilmer, you know that you literally have to walk along the side of the building to the front onto Chapel Avenue to get into the building. Well, we've changed all that, and it looks fabulous. So I'm anxious to show you that. At Beck, we did some flooring replacement. We had talked about doing lockers at Beck over spring break. We opted to do this project instead. We actually removed some carpeting and replaced it with some tile, VCT tile. Looks absolutely fabulous. That project is about 95% done. They're going to wrap it up this weekend. It involved an asbestos abatement, which is why we wanted to do it while the building was not occupied, and then the replacement of the flooring. At East, we did also some concrete work, some new dugouts. This was a piece of the money. If you recall last year when we got the additional state aid, we wanted to spend some money on our athletic facilities. And so we have some pictures of new dugouts to show you there. The wall repair, the project that's been ongoing, we had some issues with some of the glass that was installed that needed to be replaced, and they worked on that last week. And then our auditorium roof replacement project, which we did not anticipate. A couple weeks ago when we had the high winds, we had some issues with that roof there. The roof is a vinyl membrane roof that actually separated from the building. So we did some stopgap repairs, and that's a project, as you know, that we plan to do as part of our budget for next year. West, also some new dugouts, and then our door replacement project. As you know, this has been a long road to get these doors replaced. We had a contractor that we ended up getting out of the contract with. So we have a new contractor in. It's the same contractor that did our vestibule at Barclay. And he was here last week doing lots of work, and that project is moving right along. So we're very happy about that. And then we also awarded a contract not too long ago to do some major roof repairs. We know we're going to do a lot of roofing work when the referendum work comes through, but we needed to do some stopgap things until that happened. So we have some roof repairs going on next week too. So we have a couple pictures for you. This is Kilmer. Not only did we address the walkway across the front of the building, we also addressed, as you walked into the building, there was kind of a lull there. And when there was rain or snow, it would freeze over. So we got rid of that as well. So if you happen to be on Chapel Avenue, and be careful, don't, just slow down and take a look at it. And this is the walkway from the parking lot. So this way now you can walk right around the building there. There will be a change order for this project. For whatever reason, when we did this project, we didn't do the last piece, which was kind of the handicap wrap that went into the parking lot. And when you butted it up against the new concrete, it just looked terrible. So we asked them to do that piece as well. So you will see a change order for that piece. But I'm very excited about that. It's little things in life, that get you excited. I think it just looks great. And, we're really happy that we got to do that project. This is Beck, the flooring at Beck. It looks fantastic. As you know, I'm a proponent of tile over carpet wherever we can. And so we're very pleased with this project, and we're glad to get the asbestos out and the carpet out and the tile in. So we're happy about that. East, these are our new dugouts. This is at our softball field. We had poured the concrete for this project and then installed the new dugouts there. This is our door project. In addition to replacement of the doors, we also had to replace some work above it, some canopy work there. I'm glad they got this work done, but it just looks terrible right now. So we're anxious to have them finish that piece and get the new brick in and finish up that project. The doors are not in yet. This is kind of a remnant of the canopy project that we did. We were allowed to remove the canopies but not replace them. So this is doing the door and the canopy work in conjunction. The doors are on order. The hardware has been ordered, and that'll be the next phase of this project after they finish the brickwork. This is the roof that we were talking about. You can see how it's separated there. Again, we've done some stopgap measures at this point. The big issue was when that membrane separated, the roof drain came out. So we've been able to put that back in. And again, we will, that'll be a project that we do next year. This is the concrete work that we did in the back of East. Also looks very nice back there, leading from the back of the building into kind of the gymnasium area and the lecture hall area. And then again, I just wanted to talk briefly, we did some work on our emergent repair that we had talked about a couple weeks ago at East in the generator room. We had talked about the fact that there were some structural issues with the walls in that section of the building. That section of the building has been completely cordoned off. We have fencing around the parking lot, and fortunately it's an operational area. It's a garage area, the transformer room, storage area, so there's no students or staff in that section of the building. But we did have Hessert, who is the contractor that is working on Barton, came over and removed the plaster ceiling so that the architect can get up there and take a look at it and come up with what will be the final remedy for those walls over there. First phase was to remove the ceiling. Second phase will be to put some stabilizing structure in until we can make the repairs. And then, as you know, when they built this building back in the 50s, they had these transformer rooms, right? So the transformer for that building is literally in this room, which we don't have a key to. Only PSE&G has a key to. So the major part of this project is going to be getting that transformer out of that room, because they don't do it that way anymore. They're outside now. So PSE&G was looking for a transformer the last time we talked to them. We're hoping that they can get in, get that piece out, and then we can start working on the rest of the area there. As you can see some of the structural issues there in that room, some gaps between the walls and the corners. The walls are literally kind of buckling, so it's obviously something we need to address. Yes, Mrs.
So
George?
how long is it, do you know, how long is it going to take PSE&G to get that transformer out of the room or whatever? Do you know?
It's not going to be something that happens overnight. I think probably what will happen is they will bring the new one in, set it in place, and then move the connections over to the new one. I spoke to Mr. Middleton today. He said that they say they're looking for the transformer. He thinks that if we give them a drop-dead date that they'll magically come up with the transformer and meet our deadline. So I think, that's probably the next stage in our dealings with them. Oh, and this is West. This is the softball field at West. Nice purple dugout. Is there any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Mrs. Sugars. Lots of activity. All right, we'll move into our special action section of our meeting. I ask Mrs. Seidel to move the C&I agenda, please.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2017-2018 school year. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlock. Any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Seidel?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Judge?
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack?
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes. Mr. Goodwin, would you move B and F, please?
Yes, I will. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: approval of bill lists. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge. Any questions? If not, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
I need, excuse me, I need to abstain on the bill list as to the Cooper Health System. Yes to the remainder.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz,
I need to abstain from Beata Home Health. Yes to the rest.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Abstaining from Bancroft NeuroHealth. Yes to the remainder.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes. Mrs. Judge, would you move the HR agenda, please?
Yes, I will, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointment certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, assignment salary change non-certificated. Number 6, other compensation certificated. And we have a handout with additions to number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Do I have a second? Mrs. Seidel. Are there any questions? I actually have a question. Number 3 on the pink sheet, the new head coach at East, Andrew Daly, and we're also voting on him on number 4 as an educational assistant. He, for next school year, is he going to be a out of district, or are we assuming he'll be a educational assistant again next year, or is he going to be an out of district employee for the head coaching position?
We assume he will be back next year, and his appointment for the football coach should be for next year.
For next year.
Correct.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. Thank you. Did I have a second? Did we get a second? Okay, Mrs. Seidel. Okay. All right. Sorry. I had to ask my question. Any other questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong.
Abstaining from item 3B, involving Rowan University. Yes to the rest.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes to all. Mrs. Scarpolino, would you move P&L, please?
Certainly, Dr. Dickinson. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions. And we have a green sheet. Number 2, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying hearing decision. Do I have a second? Ms. Judge, any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Need to abstain to item number 2, yes to item number 1.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Yes to all.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes. And for strategic planning, we have no items. That was a fast action agenda. Bless you. Bless you. All right, now we'll move into our second public comment period. You may now comment on any issue. When you come to the mic, please state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes for your remarks. Please note the green light will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining. The light will turn red when your 3 minutes are up.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Nadio, and I'm at 224 North Madison Avenue. Because this is a first reading, we wanted Cherry Hill Special Ed PTA wanted to be here for the physical restraint and seclusion techniques. I have a few comments, and actually I was really thankful to hear a lot of questions tonight. I have a few. If we have something called safe and positive approaches, why can we not put that into our policy? I would think that we would be able to do that. And there are no, so never mind, that was a different question. How are we making sure that out-of-district placements are following these guidelines? Are we, the district, being notified on the number of seclusions and restraints that are being used? Because there are seclusion opportunities in out-of-district placements. I've seen them myself. So I realize that we don't do that here in our district, but it is something that we should all be very aware of, and to know exactly when it's happening and how and all that kind of stuff. The other question I had was, at the end of the physical restraint, I didn't see any pieces, and I realize this is from the state, but I'm wondering if we as a district can put something in about how we are working with the students after the physical restraints and seclusions to be aware of PTSD, stress, and trauma. Those were ideas that as I'm reading this, I do feel are really important. And I also wanted to thank everyone. We had a really terrific meeting with the special ed department and Dr. Malash about security and the special education students. We have some really great things that both sides are researching, because we have had a number of families reach out to us. We as a group do not feel that bringing up personal situations in a public forum like the security forums is appropriate due to the special education students and their needs. But I want to thank everyone who has been supporting us for that. And we have our Family Fun Night on May 1st at Thomas Paine. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rick Short. I live at 1002 Chelton Parkway. I have a four-part speech. First part is going to be, I want to thank the board. Second part is about a security breach at Cherry Hill East. The third one is going to be a sidebar note before I tell you the good news about security and what we can do with 11,000 students on September 1st, my new idea. First off, it was good seeing Ms. Judge, Ms. Schultz, and Ms. Sharpolino up in Trenton at the good old fair funding meeting. I call it the Groundhog Day. Ladies and gentlemen, we are fighting, and we're all fighting together. That's good. The second thing I want to talk about is the breach that I found this weekend. And it was just because I decided I've never really audited the high school at Cherry Hill East. And it wasn't like I got out of my car and I was like walking the ground. I was just driving the ground, and I noticed a camera with no interior at all, non-functional. I took a picture of it up in it. That's on the library side. That needs to be fixed as soon as possible. This is not like a pothole situation that we can just wait for 3 months to fix a pothole. No, this is a security camera. This is called a breach. We also had another one on the side of the tennis courts. It looked like it's jammed down. It looks like it's non-functional. I've also received two other reports. One that the cameras in the front did not work about a month and a half ago. And I've also received a report that the people that actually installed it, and this is a pretty good thing because it doesn't fit any of the ASIS format, the entire high school doesn't fit it, that it was done by the AV department over a series of years. So we have some serious problems at Cherry Hill East. There's no doubt about that. To move on to my sidebar note, because what I'm going to tell you next, I don't know who's going to try to shoot down the idea or say, no, we can't do it because it has to be done all at once. My idea is that you can do parts of the cameras. You can do all the cameras. You can skip the areas where the vestibules are going to be put in. Adding 2 or 3 cameras after, if the bond gets approved, is no big deal, okay? My last idea, which is the greatest idea of all I think I've ever had, is, guys, why don't we purchase cameras? There's no reason why we can't purchase, and I'm sure the mayor, who promised, now remember, the mayor came and he bailed out everyone at the school board meeting, and he promised that he was going to secure all 19 schools. So there's no problem with coming about and doing a lease purchase for 2 years and not waiting 2 years to have cameras, and also start installing door locks. And please don't use magnetic door locks. Go with the electric. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Rossi, 102 Roanoke Road. I wanted to talk a lot about security when I first got here, but there's other things. First off, the dugouts and the fencing. I mean, Cherry Hill East, that's something to celebrate. This has been ongoing. My daughter is now a senior. She started playing on varsity in 9th grade, and it was being talked about. So that's fantastic to see that coming along and to see that finally done. The policy guide about using physical restraint and seclusion techniques on students with disabilities. I'd like to echo a bit of what I think her name was Jennifer had said. I have some questions about that. I'm not exactly sure who I would direct them to. Probably Dr. Campisi. I could, but the questions in the group. And I'm sure it's somewhere. It's not in here, but I'm sure it could be found somewhere. I circled the phrase physical restraint numerous times, well over a dozen. Where can we find the definition, and what are these techniques that are being trained by the trainer or being trained? I think that's a very important thing for us as parents and community members to understand how that is going to be used. Number 2 on that would be, it includes staff, I'm assuming. It includes teachers. Will it include SROs? Will it include any police officers that are in the building? I mean, these conversations that we've had in many of the safety security meetings brought a lot of those questions. And I think this continues that dialogue as community members of, where can we find these definitions? And I think that this is a great place to have those conversations and to get those questions answered. I-2, the funding meetings, or shall I say the budget committee meetings. I know, Mrs. Judge, you were there. I also believe you were there yesterday, was it? I was at both of them, and then also the other one yesterday, which was the about school security, the state committees. I was glad to see the language that the board used. I will say, to hear the language that was being presented to the legislators of the damage that has been done over the years of the lack of federal funding. I mean, there's been a group, federal funding group, or the Fair Funding Group has been talking about it for a long time, but to hear it from you guys, I think that's good for us to hear. So I wanted to thank you on that. I had a lot more, but I'll have to save it for another time. All right? Thank you.
Ann Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. So I have a question or a concern about your quick question website. There is an issue in the fact that I don't know what quick means, but unfortunately I did submit two questions 4 weeks ago, and I'm still kind of waiting to see it on your website. So if we could investigate that. I know that seems to be a concern outside in the community as well. The other thing, and I don't know if this is feasible, I don't know if it's part of security, there is still this ongoing discussion in the community that you did not use a security company when you were planning the vestibules at 2 of the schools. This is not a criticism on my part. I'm just so tired of social media saying that someone is not doing their job. I can't believe in this day and age that there wasn't any security expert of some kind. I don't know if that's if it's Bessica and Associates who needs to respond to that, or if our district needs to respond to that. But I would certainly appreciate it to temper some of the emotions that have been shown on Facebook of late. The other thing I noticed on the website, as you move forward trying to promote the bond and the success of a bond, is that there's a lot of discussion about the capital reserve and that we're wasting it. And I don't think most people understand, if they haven't sat on that side of the table, what capital reserve means. Okay? So if we could also, I don't know if I'm putting even more on Mrs. Wilson's shoulders, and I apologize, but the community perception is sad right now of what the board is not doing or what administration is not doing, because I know that there is a lot of work. And I wish most people could sit on the other side of that board for 6 months and see what happens. The other thing I'd like to know, well, actually I would like to just state, I am assuming that there was a reason that we're doing the type of construction that we're doing at Payne and Woodcrest on the issue that you voted tonight, okay? Somebody had to be an expert, all right? I don't know what's going to calm the community down. I'm just so tired of someone telling me on Facebook that I have a security advisor, I have this, I have that, because I don't know who that security advisor is either. So if we could try to resolve this issue of, yes, we're not just doing this as an abstract projection or a project, that we're doing this for the safety of our kids, I would certainly appreciate it, because I still live here, okay, and I still care about this community. But the perception and the negativity is starting to grate on me, and I'm not good when I'm upset, okay? So I'd appreciate just trying to get those answers up on the district website so that they're somewhat clear and concise, so that we can all understand what's going on. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Thank you all for coming out. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Have a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Judge and Mrs. Scarpolino. Good night, everybody.